What is going on YouTube? Twitchy Tango here, and we are about less than a year, less than half a year as of the day of this upload. I believe 5 months and 24 days to be exact. Don't hold me to it. My math could be off by a day or two of Resident Evil 4 Remake's release. We're also next month, sometime in October, getting to see more gameplay. And your boy is excited. A lot of people are excited, maybe hesitant. Who knows at this point? Because if you take Reddit or 4chan leaks with like a grain of salt, like I do, then you're probably having a meltdown thinking they're cutting stuff. But semantics aside, uh, people are excited, worried, hyped. A lot more feelings in between. And who can blame them? Because for a lot of people, Resident Evil 4 was their first step into survival horror franchise. It's for some, it's in their top 5, top 10 favorite games of all time. Who can blame them? I think its upgrading system is still the best upgrading system to this date. No game has touched it since then. The gameplay, for better or worse, is amazing. But that's just kind of, Resident Evil 4. On top of that, it changed the gaming sphere. And I know that gets said over and over again, but it is kind of true because of what they did with a third-person perspective. But many people are very hesitant about this remake because of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Again, I'm just going to say this. We shouldn't be concerned because, from my understanding, after the reception of Resident Evil 3 Remake, Capcom was like, you guys aren't touching any of these ever again. But that could be just people saying because of how poorly it was received. But I think they're taking that feedback from how friends felt about Resident Evil 2 Remake and 3 Remake and putting all that into making sure RE4 Remake is a perfect game, beholden to the original while doing its own thing. And if Remake 4 is a disappointment, you can still play the original in its many releases and forms. It's not going away. Still, the best way to play it is the Wii. Just saying. This week, throughout these, just today, but throughout the next several videos, we're going to be discussing what I think can make Resident Evil 4 Remake very playable and continuously played for years. But today we're discussing the non-existent difficulty of Resident Evil 4. So strap yourselves in. You're going to have a lot of salt in this video. Without further ado, though, let's jump into it. Resident Evil 4 is a game that is for babies. All joking aside, Resident Evil 4 is a very forgiving game with its various amounts of checkpoints and typewriters you're given. You go into an area that involves you going through a door that involves you loading into an area that's a check save. You can literally go through that door, get another checkpoint, reset the area that you can do, and that's a save. You literally get the save. You can literally get a typewriter, save the game, and you're a few steps from ending the chapter. And that's just how it is. Case in point, right before you find Luis, and in the first chapter, section 1, you're giving a typewriter. You can save there, or find Luis, and complete the chapter, or save there. And literally, as soon as you start up the game, you got another typewriter. But that's because you're literally going to be hit with a bunch of enemies. And it's quite an easy game in the grand design of it all. One of the neat things about the quote-unquote difficulty of the game is the enemies, the Ganados. The Ganados have a unique AI system and how they interact towards you depending on how good or bad you're doing. If you're doing really bad, they're not as aggressive towards you, and killing them tends to give you a lot more ammo when you're definitely needing it. Little things like that, improving the drop of ammo instead of just getting money, healing items. And if they're not as aggressive, they don't run toward you as they would normally do. They start walking towards you more, very menacingly, I might add, and allow you a bit of breathing room. But if you're an absolute Giga Chad, then the guys will be on you like a stampede. They'll be more aggressive. You won't get as much ammo to drop. Little things like that really improve upon the enemies and how they interact with you. And that's one thing I hope Remake 4 keeps, is how the enemies react to how the enemies react to how good or bad you are doing. Again, the game in of itself is not difficult, even on professional, due to the amount of auto saving and how aggressive or not aggressive the enemies react to you. But bear in mind, there are still some people I know to this day that don't even want to touch Resident Evil 4 because they feel like it's too difficult. And that's okay, because I was one of those people for many years, never tried to do a professional run until I got it on PC and decided, you know what, my first professional run is going to be a randomizer. And I died 100 times. A lot of that coming from QT events. But you see, some people just don't want to take that chance. Uh, but it is arguably probably one of the most easiest Resident Evils ever made, and it has a lot of leniencies for first time players, and that's not a bad thing. Whether it's how the upgrading system works, whether it's how you're supposed to play the game and it teaches you those things as well. I don't think Remake 4 needs to add a difficulty a la Village of Shadows. Resident Evil, and of course, let's honorable mention Resident Evil 3 Inferno, which is probably one of the most hardest difficulties. Well, truthfully, not even that hard once you get past the first few minutes, because it can get pretty nuts. Resident Evil Village's hardest difficulty is difficult, but not in a good kind of way. There's a lot that goes into needing to beat the game on that difficulty, and where enemies can take you out in a few hits. And I tested it on just regular, enemies, and it was 3 hits. I'm sure bigger enemies can take you out in less, but I guess it also has a lot to do with trying not to get hit, because you're going to go through a lot of healing items. I know I did, because I had like 6 on a fresh start of Village of Shadows with a maxed out Magnum, Infinite Magnum, and I was still struggling to keep healing. So it's not really good kind of difficult. And even though you can one tap a lot of normal enemies, bigger mini bosses, so to speak, take a bunch of hits, even from a fully kitted out Magnum, which I don't think that's fun or ideal. There isn't a need for RE4 Remake to have a new difficulty mode that is difficult for difficulty's sake. Honestly, something like Resident Evil 7's Madhouse difficulty, I think, would fit Remake 4 better, because it made the enemies hit harder and it changed up their placement, but it wasn't insanely difficult. It had a healthy amount of difficulty to it, and if you played the right strats, you could easily clear the game. And I beat the game, because that was one of the last trophies I needed on top of getting all the coins in the game. And I had to limit myself to 3 saves, because saves were already limited, which would be a nice thing to see. I think if you were to introduce something like that for Remake 4, it would be loads better than Village of Shadows type difficulty, and that has enemies faster, hit harder, become the sort of bullet sponges, and can end you in just a few hits. If they just keep the professional mode, maybe take away some of the autosaves, make the enemy volume higher, make typewriters few and far between, make the merchant not show up as often. A little things like that to improve upon the difficulty, and even more so, on top of that, make the merchant few and far between, so you really need to make your upgrades count. Make the cost of weapons and items and upgrading of items cost a little bit more. And of course, increase the puzzle difficulty, because the Resident Evil 4 puzzles are just there. They're non-existent. They're not difficult by any stretch of the imagination. And I think maybe making the difficulty of them more intense, the higher you go on the, whether it's normal, professional, easy, would be a good change of pace. And since they are going with a more survival horror route, like it was originally planned to be, make healing and ammo scarce, so you really have to pick and choose the best approach with all the gun autos and not being able to go all guns blazing. Just make the difficulty modes more difficult without making it a slog. I think Remake 4 has the potential to be an amazing game as well as a challenging one if they do it right. Make the game challenging, but don't make it difficult for difficult sakes. Even more so, the bosses you can face, like the Big Cheese and Krauser, are fairly easy, because it shows you how to beat them when you encounter them for their fights. The Big Cheese is susceptible to fire. That shows that to you when Leon shoots Brown and removes Mendez clothes, and with enough incendiary grenades, I believe about 5 or 6 on professional, you don't have to waste any ammo on them. It's easy claps. Krauser's introduction, though, is probably one of the best and worst introductions of any character ever, because it's nothing but a freaking quick time event. But it's Krauser, And that's okay because we love that Ultra Giga Chad Comrade Krauser. All you gotta do with Krauser's fight is to use your ammo to beat while having to waste a single bit of ammo. Again, this really just works better with the Ditman glitch, which involves using the striker, because even when I cleared him, I had to use a few mag round shots to stun him and continue knifing him. And that's just, that's just how it works. Do I think the Ditman glitch will be in Remake 4? I don't know, man. That was just kind of a glitch that kind of just happened. I'm sure Capcom acknowledges it, whether they keep it in there or not, as a ode to the man who found it. I don't know. But of course, I don't want the same song and dance for bosses like Krauser and the Big Cheese if it's as all as possible. But almost every boss can be cleared with a rocket launcher. Yeah, you talk about a cheese. That's a beauty of this game. Like, Merchant sells you rocket launchers at certain integral points where you can use rocket launchers to instantly kill a lot of bosses. Though I tested it with Sadler, and I hit him one time. I had to hit him his face with a rocket launcher, and then hit him with a mag round, and then it got Ada to drop the special rocket launcher. So he's the only boss that will not go down with a one tap, with a rocket launcher. But I think having these weaknesses exploitable is part of the charm of Resident Evil 4, and I wouldn't be mad if they kept that in Resident Evil 4 Remake. Krauser's weak to knives, and the Big Cheese is susceptible to fire. Keep those things. And of course, if you just want to be really fun, keep a rocket launcher for that little short king, Salazar, and blow his head off. You're welcome. But of course, I think Remake 4 needs to change how the bosses operate, at least to a certain extent, but leave those cheeses in. Just for the fond memories that we have of not wasting ammo. I'm not saying it needs to stay easy. Resident Evil 4, though, is arguably the easiest RE title to date due to the constant autosaves, accessible weapons, healing items. Professional can be a cakewalk once you get enemies down and know which weapons to use instead of what you're comfortable with. I just did my first ever, normal professional run, and it was fairly easy once I got used to it. But I think Resident Evil 4 Remake could make professional harder without adding, Leon's going to die difficulty. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Do you think Resident Evil 4 Remake needs to change the difficulty of its original to keep with the modern times? Should they keep the current difficulty modes and change it up? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Comment your thoughts. Tell me what you want to see for the difficulty in RE4 Remake. And turn that notification bell on. Like the video, because that really helps. I'm pretty sure I'm just repeating myself at this point. But as we end these videos, I love you all. I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.